Welcome to this tutorial for Public Administration 6123 Economic Development. In this tutorial we will cover two items that are needed for assignments 3 and beyond. First, inflation adjustments, how to make inflation adjustments to numeric data, typically dollar amount data, as well as stitching data from two different sets across two different table sets, the SIC and the NAICS codes, for looking at employment data and wage data by sector. We will begin with looking at how to adjust dollar amounts for inflation. Looking at this example, we have pulled information from two tables. We have pulled information on the implicit price deflator from line number 1, or labeled line 1, in the GDP implicit price deflator spreadsheet that was provided as part of assignment 3. We have pulled the information for years 1990 to 1997 for our example. For assignment 3, of course, you are working with data from 1990 to 2015. In this case, we are going to index for 1990 as equaling 100. This is very similar to how we did it for indexing population. The equation is very similar. As you can see here, you would take the value of the particular period. In this case, in 1990, it would be 66.773. You divide it by itself, which in the equation means that you divided B2 by B2. You take that result and you multiply it by 100 to get 100. To make the calculation work properly, if you're able to see up here, you would put a dollar sign before the denominator use of B2, the second use of B2, which will lock in the reference cell going forward to being column B. So it would be, the equation would read equals parentheses B2 divided by dollar sign B2 in parentheses times 100. If you copy and paste that calculation forward, you will see that it has now been re-indexed so that we start off with 1990 being 100, and inflation has been indexed every year from that point. Based on the information provided in row 2, we have the results for row 3. Now we have taken from CA05 the 1990 to 1997 current earnings by place of work for one of the North Carolina counties. By the way, this information is shown in thousands of dollars, not in actual dollars, so it's actually $2,351,000,000 in 1990, not $2,351,000. But we do that. They do that a lot of times with data. They shrink it down to thousands or single dollar amounts. You typically have to work with it and kind of follow along based on what is shown in the original lines of the table. This, of course, came from line 35 of the CA05N for a given county. We have the inflation index that we have just copied over from up here, and then we can adjust for inflation with a very simple calculation that you see there below. Equals the current earnings, which we have here in B6, and you divide that by the results of the inflation index divided by 100. And that, of course, gives you the same results as you have for 1990 because the index starts at 100. But if we copy and paste the formula forward, you will see that the numbers adjust to where they continue to grow, but as you see, they grow at lower levels compared to the current earnings, the earnings in current dollars for each year. As you can tell, when you adjust for inflation, you're looking at it from a real value perspective, and so the numbers are lower because you're comparing it over time. And another way to look at it is to look at this chart here, which, as you can see, you see the blue line, which would be in current earnings for each year within the current that current dollar amount, and then when you adjust for inflation or to show the real value over time, you see that that number continues to increase, but at a slower rate. When you look at some jurisdictions, particularly those that have seen declines in employment or significant declines in employment or shifts of employment from one sector to another, you will find that there are locations out there where if you looked at their numbers adjusted for inflation, you would actually see earnings by place of work decrease over time. Most places it increases over time, or it hopefully remains flat, but there are those places where it has decreased over time. And that's especially true when you start taking it at the per capita level, when you start looking at it at a per capita amount, because obviously higher paying jobs can affect earnings by place of work at an aggregate level like this, but so can the number of jobs, and it is possible that you could see a location see increased total earnings while per capita earnings remain flat or decline, particularly when you start accounting for inflation. Now for the second part of this tutorial, we will look at how you stitch data from two different tables that are pulling the same relative types of data but are pulling it with respect to two different reference groups. And when you're working with employment data, there's some situations you have to deal with respect to the tables and how data is categorized. From the 1960s all the way up to 2000, the government used a data set known as SIC for categorizing information by industrial sector or by sector of the economy. And starting in 2001, they went to a different grouping called NAICS. Now, SIC and NAICS, in most cases at the county level and even at the state level, there's not a lot of difference when you actually read the descriptions for each line of data in a given table for a given jurisdiction. When you go to national level data, the differences start to be more noticeable, because with NAICS there is further drill down of different industries. Obviously, as our techniques and our methods become more capable, we are able to get deeper into data and try to quantify it as such. But at local levels, when we're really looking at overall groups of data, we can typically see how the SIC data, we can typically find its partner line within the NAICS. For this example, we have pulled up two different worksheets. To the left is the spreadsheet CAO5, and to the right is spreadsheet CAO5N. CAO5 has the information if you're working on assignment 3 for years 1999 through 2000. CAO5N will have the data from 2001 to 2015. In lots of cases, it's pretty easy to compare the data. For example, when you're looking for line 35 data and you are going to the line code, which is column E in both tables, you will see that line code 35 for your given jurisdiction, in this case we're looking at Buncombe County, is line code 33, and both of them is earnings by place of work. So that one is an easy one to take data and basically copy and paste the data from one table and the data of the other table into a single table. So my recommendation, much as you've done before, is to create a spreadsheet that you can use to copy and paste the data from these two tables and put it into a third table that you have that stitches them together. So that's pretty simple. As we go down other lines, like for example, typically the first industry that comes across when you're working with data is the agricultural sector. You can see that farm earnings, actually the line code is the same, even though their industry code numbers are a little different. Then as you start moving forward, you might start seeing some differences. But typically when we're working with this information, we're going to work on it at a far more aggregate level. We're not asking you to get too deep into the weeds here. So farm earnings would be an example to look at. But when you start looking a little deeper, for example, you have mining activity. Well, here in SIC under CAO5, mining is line code 200, and it has an industry code of B. It was industry B. Whereas over here in the NAICS of table CAO5N, mining is actually a little different. Mining is line code 200 again, but it's industry code 21. They went to a numeric code, and what they did was, and they built off of it, what they did was the main industries were 2-digit, and then sub-industries were treated with a 3-digit code. Same you can see there with utilities and construction. So what you're probably wanting to do when you start trying to put together an industrial profile is look at the alphabetical codes at the industry level here, and in column F of the 05 report, or the CA05 or the CA25 report, and then compare those to the 2-digit numbers in column F of the CA05N and CA25N reports. And that's typically where you can line them up. So for example, we go down a little further, we can find that in column F of CA05 you have alpha C for construction, and that corresponds to number 23 in column F in the CA05N report. And again, you would take those lines, you would look at them and compare them. You have the descriptions here written in text, and you take that information and you start building your set. Because if you know that it's perhaps 23, you can actually do some sorting using the filter feature. My recommendation is, when you're working with these tables, to use the filter feature in Excel so that you can kind of sort it to where you're only working with your given county or with statewide data or with national data. And remember that in each of these spreadsheets you have 2 worksheets. One has the statewide as well as all the county data for North Carolina, and then the other one has US data to work with as well.